Hello, my name is Beks, and I'm the founder and CEO of African Bush Camps. I started my career as a guide, and so I literally moved from the bush to the boardroom. And one of the questions that I get asked about quite a lot is, Beks, when is the best time for us to come on safari? That's a bit of a difficult question because it really all depends on what your dream has always been about Africa and what it is that sparks you in the first place to inquire about Africa. And it's this very reason that people come to Africa and completely fall in love. And my immediate response is that we end up having people visit a multiple number of times, basically at least 4 different times. And I can assure you that in those 4 different times, you will see a totally different drama unfold. And it's this curiosity that keeps people coming back to Africa. So if you're looking for an adventure or a chance to reconnect with nature, which is the attitude that most people have. In that case, it doesn't really matter what time of the year. You'll still have a different type of drama evolve. But it's worth sifting to some of the expectations. If you're a bidder, for example, or if you are into the big five, or if you want peace and tranquility, or if you want a sense of connection with the family or whoever you might be traveling with. All these are the factors that you would consider in choosing the time of the year that you could come. So today, it brings us to our topic, which is seasons. And for that, I'm going to be having a conversation with my friend Dophas, who is one of our guides based in Zimbabwe. Dophas is a great example of one of our aspiring guides whose career started off as a maintenance man in the back in the workshop. And that was 9 years ago. Dophas has been with us for over 9 years now. And from back of house, he decided to move to the front of house where he helped a little bit in the kitchen. And he still wanted to come forward and he started training as a waiter. And before we knew it, he was training as part of management. But at the back of his head, he really aspired to be a guide. So Dophas went on 2 years ago and did his guide's license. And since then, he's really been at the forefront of sharing guests, sharing the wilderness area of Zimbabwe with his guests, and really getting an insight into what it's about to be a guide.
Thank you very much, Bex. I started my journey with African bush camps at Somalisa in the year of 2011. By then, I was a maintenance guy who used to help open roads and keep camp clean. Sorry. Then in 2012, I was then pulled into the kitchen to help with the pottering. By then, I was the youngest in camp, so it was easy for them to take me through the kitchen. And that I must say was the opening door, so like the time when I opened my eyes. It was like an eye opener. So getting into the kitchen, I worked there for 3 to 4 months. But while I was in the kitchen, I used to look through the goals there, the nets, and check and see how the waiters were serving the guests and how the host and the guides were interacting with the guests. And just somehow I felt I wanted to be there. That's how I felt at that moment, to say,
You wanted to get involved in the action. You wanted to get involved in the action. You didn't want to be left behind, right?
I didn't want to be behind the scenes, so I just wanted to get involved in the action. So after 3 to 4 months in the kitchen, I approached management and told them, can I please turn into waitering? And they're like, why would you want to leave the kitchen? You're doing so. Then I told them, I want to get involved in the action. And I wanted the opportunity to go there in 2012. Then I wanted the opportunity to join in the waitering service. So I trained my training there and eventually landed my contract as a waiter. So during the first day, it was all about trying to get involved and just doing my job. But with 3-4 months into the job, I developed passion for it. So I started enjoying what I was doing. And then the process, I would get involved in conversation with guests and just being able to share our traditions and our different cultures, and for them to tell me how America is and I tell them where I come from. That to me was a big thing, and that just kept pushing me. And without realizing how much I was pushing myself, I was then called by management and I was offered the hosting duties. So that for me was like an exciting thing where I was like, yay, I'm eventually getting there. And I did my hosting, and at the end of 2017, was approached and I was sent to Manapus, which was quite an exciting time for me because I'd always wanted to go out and see how everything worked in other camps. But then I was offered the job of management in 2018. So I wrote my guides exam, which I passed. And in 2018, I was also offered the job of a trainee manager. So I did that a little bit in the office, but I felt now I was limited. I couldn't go out there because during the times when I was hosting, I used to be a bit of an ambassador where I would talk to guests about what the company was doing, the African Bushcraft Foundation was doing for the local communities and how they're benefiting from us running as a tour operator close to the boundary. So I felt I wanted to be more than an ambassador of the people. I wanted to be the voice of animals, to be able to go out there and showcase these animals and be the ambassador. So that's one of the things that pushed me. And also just seeing people like you, Beks, coming to camp with guests on private safari and see how much excitement you had in your face and how much your guests were really enjoying being just around you and you taking them out on the field and them just coming back to camp and talking about how exciting their morning was or how their evening was. That drive kept pushing me. That's the drive that made me want to go and write my learners. And when I got my learners, I just couldn't wait to stay in the office. I just wanted to get out in the field and be able to share this experience with our kids coming through from different parts of the world.
Well, Dophas, you've had an incredible journey, and one that you need to continue to inspire others to join you. So you're quite a legend, and many people talk about you, and we get a lot of guest feedback about the incredible times that you share with people. So we're very excited to have you join us today, where you'll be sharing with us some of your experiences in the different seasons. Many of us also believe that Botswana is a true reflection of a vast wilderness area with extraordinary wildlife and interesting natural ecosystems, from the Okavango Delta to the Linyanti marshes to the desert. I will probably touch base a little bit on those areas that I've had incredible experiences in the different seasons. So Dophas, I think maybe when we talk about seasons, for some of our audiences that have never been to Africa, it's probably important that for us all to appreciate what we mean by seasons. And I think today we're going to focus on what people know as two seasons, which really is the wet season, which is from December through to end of March, and then the dry season, which is in our winter, which is predominantly from sort of April, May through to end of July. Do you want to maybe explain and expand a little bit what wet season means to you as a guide and what dry season means and the difference in the two seasons?
I think looking at the green season or the wet season, they call it, it's a time just after our rain starts dropping. The scenery is nice and green and fresh after our rains have just hit the ground. And that is the time when you start new plants shooting out, water lilies coming out, we get butterflies fluttering around, and the magnificent storms, clouds, and the rainbows, of course, and not forgetting the lightning and the clouds with the background of your photos as you're on your photographic safari. Also, in the wet seasons, we look at games such as the impalas or your antelopes, impalas, kudus, waterbuck, sable. That is when they also start calving. And there's a lot of life, believe me, when you're out here seeing them, at their best behavior, they've got enough food to eat, almost all nutrients are available for them. And also, it is a time when most of our better guests come in, where we're starting to get different migrant birds, both intra-African and phyletic migrants coming from Europe and Africa, from different worlds or continents around the world. It is also a time when, as I mentioned, that the animals are at their best behavior. They've got enough food, less stressed, and of course, unfortunately, it's a sad time for our cats because all animals are at their best behavior, so it's not an easy cage for them. But then one may tend to worry, because what happens is during the rainy season, there's water everywhere. That is our wet season. There's water everywhere for these animals, so they can drink wherever they like. So they don't have to concentrate a certain water holes at a given time. So they're also quite widespread along the park. And most people tend to wonder and say it's quite thick during the wet season. But wow, the advantage about our park, specifically here, Hwange National Park, we've got both the savanna woodland and the open grass woodland, where you can see different species on different places. So when we talk of the dry season, it is also a time when we start getting our migratory birds starting to go back to their original countries, and our water holes, the natural water holes around the park, start drying up. So these animals start congregating along the water holes that we start pumping. So us as camps and there's a group called Friends of Wange that also start pumping water around the parks. And in our camps, we start pumping water for them in water holes. That is when we get big herds of elephants coming through to drink water, and we get to see most of the animals just congregated around the water holes. And you can see through the bushes because by then the grass is starting to turn brown and the elephants are trembling on it. So while you're driving, if you stop, you can see from quite a distance, maybe 500 meters to a kilometer through the bushes. That's another advantage of the dry season. Whereas in the wet season, it's quite green and the grass is a bit thick, so you don't have that see-through as you have in the dry season. Plus, also in the dry season, wildlife is quite much easier to spot. As I mentioned, it's quite open and you can see from quite a distance.
That's great. And I guess looking at the two comparatives, if I look at a country like Botswana, that runs its season exactly the same as Zimbabwe, it also is very similar in terms of what you've just described there. But what I want to point out is that there's a very unique aspect of Botswana where it might be the dry season, okay, between April, May through to July. But you've got this phenomenon of the Okavango Delta where the rains would have fallen during the wet season, so December through to March, but only arrive in the Okavango Delta in our winter, in the early part of our winter. So all of a sudden you've got everywhere else that is super dry, and yet you've got this Okavango Delta that is really starting to swell up, and all your rivers are flooding. And of course, the flooding of the Okavango Delta also influences all your other tributaries and rivers, such as the Linyanti, the Botete River, the Savuti River, and of course, the famous Chobe River. So you've got this vast influence of water under dry conditions, which brings a very interesting aspect of it. And I guess what I want to find out from you, Dophas, is that, you know, you've spoken quite a lot about Wange. So when you go further north in other parts of the country that you've had also an incredible experience working, such as Mana pools, what would you say the dryness, I mean, unfortunately, people miss out on probably what I think is the best time in Mana pools to see Mana pools, which is during the rainy season, because most of Mana pools is closed. And the camps that we have there are open some until end of November, but some until end of December. But between January to end of March, we've got this period of time where all your animals, as you rightly pointed out, are in their best shape. You've got all your summer visitors in terms of birds, your migration birds. But which time of the year for you would you say is what you thrive the most at, particularly in a place like Mana Pools or maybe even around Lake Kariba? And what might it be that you would focus on the most that really ticks your boxes for you?
I think talking of Mana pools, I also prefer the dry season, because when you're out there, it is the time when you can do those incredible walking safaris along the rivers, getting to canoe and just walking to those chilled pools and Mana pools there. It's quite a magnificent time there.
So recently, as you probably know, Dophas, during the rainy season, during the last rainy season in December, we opened a new camp called Migration Expeditions, which really focuses on what is one of Africa's longest migrations for the zebra. And this camp is based for 4 months in Ngaipan, which is a desert part of Botswana next to the Makgadikgadi. These zebras are probably doing close to 1,000 kilometers back and forth, from Ngaipan all the way to the Chobe River to the floodplains of Namibia along the Caprivi Strip. Now, it's those phenomenons that are actually quite exciting. So that happens during the rainy season. Those zebras are very scattered that time of the year. Through the Mopane, through thick bush, as they're moving from the desert to all of these rivers. So I guess that time of the year, you also have your baby season, which is something that very few people actually acknowledge, that, you know, you've got your impalas, you've got your gemsbok, and various antelope that are actually calving down, and it's a super time for predators actually. But you've also got all your insects that are booming. So your birds are just absolutely delightful and feasting with all these incredible things that are emerging from the ground, including your flying termites, that time of the year is their time when they emerge out of those termite mounds. So all of a sudden, from a very parched, dark, difficult area to operate for the wildlife, where sometimes particularly in the last dry season, we saw that a lot of elephants died, and there's been reports in the previous drought of many elephants dying. Then all of a sudden, you've got this bush that comes alive. I mean, I'm particularly disappointed this time of the year, being in lockdown, that we are unable to get to a place like the Okavango Delta, which at this time of the year is probably one of the most spectacular floods that we've seen in the history, certainly of the tourism career in Botswana. And yet, last year was a phenomenal year of one of the driest, where it was very, very low and not much of a flood. And yet this year, it's really at its peak. And that's the same, I suppose, with the Victoria Falls, where there was so much news of the Victoria Falls being dry, which was of course not quite correct. But right now, it's the highest it's ever been for so many people in the history of the last 20 years. So it is really quite a weird phenomenon that nature has this, where at its best, none of us are able to be there to see it. But let's turn back to Botswana. We're offering quite a perk at the moment for 2021 with private guides. And that's something I know that you aspire to, where if people book, for example, in Nyanti, Kwai, and then finish off at Naipan, and that would be, of course, during the rainy season, they get this exclusive use of a private guide to travel with them from day one to the end of the trip. Is that something that you quite enjoy doing, being able to meet guests from day one and being able to take them through the different areas and share the different hidden gems, if I can call them that, of those particular areas for that particular season? Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about the advantages of doing that?
Oh yes, definitely. It is an amazing thing where if guests step into the land, like you've mentioned, like the promotion you're doing in Botswana, where the guests step into Zimbabwe, you pick them up and you take them through the camps in Zimbabwe. You kind of first you make a bit of a bond with them, and just the experiences keep going up and up and up and up without them changing the guide, and just showing them different experiences and things that you can do while showcasing wildlife is just one of the amazing things.
And Dophas, right now as we speak, could you maybe tell our audience exactly where you're sitting? I mean, you've had assignments throughout the different parts of Zimbabwe, which is quite an incredible experience to be able to have that privilege. But where are you sitting right now? And assuming that we are going to open in our last quarter of this year, where are you headed to? Where's your next assignment?
Right where I'm sitting now, I'm sitting in Wangen National Park in our guide's office, where we do all our researches and everything. But as you mentioned, so when the guests come through, we're looking at enhancing the experience and adding on to those memories, trying to find the best way we can, keep them getting more and more memories and experiences, so that when they go out there and share the memories with everyone else, so that everyone else will also want to come back and experience what they've experienced here.
And so just to confirm the water holes, I mean, what's the level of the water holes right now? Is there still plenty of water around, so wildlife is still scattered, or is it starting to congregate now in big numbers? What are the water holes doing? What are the levels?
So I must say most of our natural water holes I've already dried up, so we're busy pumping around our concessions, and our water levels are still looking good. We're starting to get big heads of elephants coming through to drink in front of camp. We just, speaking of this, 2 days back, we had Cecil's Pride, the pride of 16 of them came through to camp, which was an amazing to drink in front of camp. Also, I mean, like you're saying, water holes, that is where now they're concentrating. Chris's pen, one of our water holes, a Ray's pen, our water holes are looking good. So, yeah.
So you're happy with the last rainy season then, that we're not going to see the dryness by the end of this dry season that we saw last year, because that was quite catastrophic in many ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, the last season was quite a terrible one. This year, I think this season things are going to be slightly better. There's not going to be like a 90% difference, but that little difference that is there is going to make things much, much better than what we experienced last season.
I think it's safe to say, Dophas, that wherever your next assignment is going to be. And I certainly speak for myself. I'm simply looking forward to just being able to be back in the bush and creating and sharing those wonderful memories with our guests. And that's no matter where it is, whether it's the Delta or seeing the falls or seeing Mana Pools or Wange, and particularly seeing the wildlife at its best. So Dophas, just moving on, I mean, you've been probably one of our key guides in guiding family safaris. And of course, that also goes without say that my 3 children have been fortunate enough to have you look after them and guide them in our various camps. And I think actually the last time you guided my children was in Kanga, where my 5-year-old daughter completely fell in love with you. She was so besotted with you that it was all tears streaming down her cheeks by the time we left Kanga Pan. But could you maybe tell us a little bit more when it comes to family travel? Is there a particular season that you see kids get excited about on safari when they travel? Or does that not really matter with the children? And if you do have a particular season, maybe you want to just talk a little bit about why they get excited about that.
All right, so well, I do have a sort of particular season. I think dry season is like one of the best seasons for the kids coming on safari, because I mean, there's a lot to do in the dry season. Just starting off in camp before we go out in the bush, like here in camp, we do offer pizza making for kids. And during the dry season, we have no rains, which means they're able to go out there and make their own pizza doughs and be able to make their homemade pizza. Then coming back into our guiding field, it's a time here at Somalisa or as African bush camps, we do offer nature walks for kids. And that is the safest time, I believe, when you're walking on quite an open area where you can see through the bushes. It is a time where you can take the kids safely without having to worry much about their safety. It is a time when we're able to pick up dung and just, as a guide, show them the dung, different types of dung. So basically, I would say dry season will be the best. And by then also, temperatures are not very cold for them, so they're able to go out on safari. It's not raining where they have to be left in camp and not go out on safari. So I think basically the dry season does work quite very well. And, speaking of Kanga, it is also a good time where they can be able to sit just and enjoy that armchair safari in front of the waterhole as they see animals come and drink in front of camp.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's always interesting how kids are into everything, but you are right. I think the fact that it's a dry season, it means that you can take them out for nature walks, and it's a lot safer. You don't have the tall grass. You don't have, you reduce the risk of something jumping up and surprising the kids on that safari. But I know certainly my kids also love to pick up stuff, and they take to tracking and learning about, how can we get a lot closer to wildlife. It's safe to say that whilst we don't walk with children below the age of 16 for safety reasons, I mean, the vast open areas of Wange where you're sitting right now, those plains are just the most incredible places to go out and collect dung and collect various artifacts for kids to be able to identify. And also, I mean, we designed these kids programs where you take the kids out. I'm sure you can relate to this, where we design this program for the kids. You take them out to nature, and you want to take them away from the parents to give the parents enough time to have a bit of a breather, have a bit of a break. But the parents actually end up joining those walks, and they love it equally just as much as the kids themselves. So Dophas, you've been incredible on this talk. Thank you very much for these insights. Continue doing what you're doing. All the best with the season. And I hope that very soon you can accommodate and welcome guests into our camps, wherever that might be for you. And thank you very much for the insights into the seasons around Zimbabwe and your preferences. And to our audience, thank you very much for being with us today. We look forward to our next conversation. All the best.